Okay, great. So today we are joined with our panel members, Dr. Christine Crawford.
Hi, so happy to be here with you all. Associate Medical Director for NAMI. I live here in Boston. And again, really happy to be able to have an opportunity to sit on this panel.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. And Lisa O'Donnell Wolfe.
Hi, everybody. I am a stress management coach and I live in upstate New York. Thank you again for having me here. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And so we decided to have this discussion because as the weather gets colder and our days are getting shorter, many of us, including myself, has noticed a shift in our moods. So we're here to learn a little bit more about how these changes have impacted us and our mental health and what we can do to better support ourselves and our loved ones. So, Dr. Crawford, if you can tell us a little bit about what are the winter blues?
It's a really great question because I think it's so important for people to know what the difference is between just feeling not so great one day and then experiencing the winter blues. So when I think about the winter blues, I think about feelings of low energy, fatigue. It's really difficult to feel motivated, to want to get out of bed and to do the things that you usually do. And not really being all that interested in connecting socially with people in your community, whether that be your friends or family. And just noticing that overall the mood is just low and it's just so hard to get up and go. And it could be really challenging because it could be a process that happens over the winter months, typically starting around November and going through December, January, February. And it could be a gradual thing. And sometimes it could be hard for people to even recognize that these symptoms are starting to settle in. But we see with the shorter days, with not being around as much outdoor sunlight, and also with the weather being so cold, it's hard to really feel motivated to put on your coat and get outside and do all the activities that you previously did, like maybe exercise outside or maybe drive to go visit a friend. It's hard to do those things that kind of kept us well and kind of kept us motivated. The winter months really make it challenging to do that. And it's a stressful time too. We'll talk a little bit later about the holidays, but it can bring on a lot of different stressors and reminders of the way things previously were. So this could be a really difficult time for people, but just kind of thinking about this low mood, low energy, loss of interest, difficulty feeling motivated and just getting up and going. That's typically what we see in the winter blues. However, it doesn't interfere with one's ability to function overall.
Great, thank you. And I just want to remember and invite everyone to use the chat if you have any questions. So my next question is, can you tell us the difference between the winter blues and seasonal affective disorder?
Yeah, so the thing about the winter blues, it's all of the symptoms that I had previously mentioned, and it doesn't get in the way with your day-to-day activities. But there are some people who have noticed that there's this recurrent pattern of low mood, especially during the winter months. And it seems to happen time and time again, that there's this seasonal component to their shift in their mood. Seasonal affective disorder isn't a specific diagnosis that we see in the DSM-5, which is the book that we use to reference all the different psychiatric conditions. It's not a standalone diagnosis, but it's often a specifier that's associated with some mood conditions such as major depressive disorder, as well as bipolar disorder. And so if people have major depressive episodes that seem to correlate with a seasonal pattern, and or they have bipolar symptoms, whether it be depression, that tends to happen in a seasonal pattern, that is what is consistent with seasonal affective disorder. Now, when we think about seasonal affective disorder or SAD, We often just think about the winter months, but it's important to know it can also happen in the summer. But we tend to see it more often in the winter months. So if you notice that you are experiencing pretty significant low energy, sleep related problems, changes in your appetite, low mood, loss of interest, and it's going on for a significant portion of the time, most of the day, nearly every day, for a few weeks in a row, and it's getting in the way of your function, and we know that it has a seasonal component, that's when one meets criteria for a seasonal affective disorder.
Great, thank you. And I was wondering if you and Lisa can share some ways that we can combat these symptoms, right? So what can we do to improve and support ourselves better during this time when we're impacted by the change of seasons? And
Who do you want to go first?
Lisa, take it away. I've heard
I'll
too
take
much
it
of my voice.
So I think one of the recommendations that I give my clients or the people who I work with is to try to keep as much normalcy as possible, because I think to your point, a lot of times we don't want to get up, we don't want to get moving, and it's important for us, especially since COVID, when a lot of people have been working from home, they're not getting out as much as they used to, they don't have a regular schedule. I try to recommend that get back to that daily schedule of going to bed around the same time every night, getting good quality sleep, waking up around the same time every day, establish the routine again, whether you go to the gym. So for example, I go to the gym every morning by 5 o'clock. And that's how I get that negative energy out of my body. I get it moving. I get the endorphins flowing, the serotonin, and I get to be around people who I enjoy spending time with. So it sort of forces me out the door. And then, I can go back home, go back to my day, go to work, etc. But I think staying into a routine as much as possible is really important. I also know that, yes, it is cold out, right? And you mentioned it's freezing and we don't want to get out, but if there is sunlight, we need that exposure. We need to get out, even if it's 10 minutes and you do a brief walk around the block, or go out with a nice hot cup of tea or coffee and warm, but get that sunlight exposure, because it does help and it is important. We want to naturally help our body with vitamin D levels, etc. And then, I think also, I believe you were going to probably talk about this, but some people will buy the light therapy. There's some good quality, not overly expensive lights that you can purchase that will help you if you are inside all day, especially if you're working from home now with COVID. I think the light therapy can help considerably, especially if you are not able to get outside consistently, or we have a really cloudy day, like yesterday was horrible with the rain. So having that light therapy will help. I know I say this all the time, and the people who know me, like Cassandra's probably thinking, oh, here she goes again. But exercise is important, even if it's 20 minutes a day, getting your body moving. And I already mentioned, the hormonal levels, the serotonin and the endorphins, it just helps you naturally to feel better. But eating right is also critical. If you're eating a lot of highly processed foods, high in sugar, or some people I know probably more alcohol intake during these times, and they're like, okay, at nighttime I'm just gonna have a glass of wine, I'm stressed. Those can negatively affect your mood. Alcohol can affect your mood, the sugars in foods, the chemicals. So the more that you can eat in that more natural state, you are going to be protecting your body, you're going to be protecting your energy levels, and you're just going to feel better overall. And then lastly, from my standpoint, self-care. And self-care doesn't have to be, listen, if you want to go to have a massage or go and get your nails done, or self-care can be a gratitude journal. It's really easy to forget all of the things that we have and how fortunate we are when we're not feeling our best. But reminding ourselves every day, write in your gratitude journal all of the things that you're thankful for. Reading those throughout the day, meditation, and because if you're not the best version of yourself, you're not going to be the best version for everybody else in your life, in your family, your friends, etc. So that's my high level recommendations. But Dr. Crawford, I'm sure you have some other suggestions.
No, and the one thing that I'll add about the self-care piece, which is so important, is that self-care really is about carving out time just for you.
Yes.
Now, during these busy winter months, we could just be so used to being in the habit of doing the most and giving the most and being around lots of people that our time just for ourselves becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. And
Right.
so whether that is exercising, journaling, but if it's also sitting on the couch watching some Netflix because you just really want to do that for that 30 minutes. I tell you, as a mom of 2 kids under 2, I just like the ability to watch TV alone for 30 minutes is that is what I desire so much these days. You know what I mean?
Even to be able to take a shower or, any of that little alone time, especially when you have young children, is like, it's bliss.
And so even though like sometimes it may be hard to get on the treadmill or to go out to the gym, what have you, but I feel like my battery has been recharged when I'm able to turn on Netflix for 30 minutes. Yeah. And so it can look a variety of different ways. It doesn't have to look like it is on social media for all the people that you follow, whatever it is that will recharge your batteries. And I have to say, Lisa's point about sticking to the routine, there's actually like a neurobiological basis in all of that. Because when we think about seasonal affective disorder, it's actually a disorder that results as secondary to disruptions in our circadian rhythm, basically our sleep-wake cycle. And what tends to happen during the short days, during the winter months, and it's dark outside, is that our body just naturally produces more melatonin. So we want to fall asleep, and melatonin is the hormone that our brain produces to make it such that we're on a better sleep-wake cycle. And so if you notice that you're sleeping too long, sometimes that can result in us feeling really tired during the day. You don't feel like you're well rested. And so if you can make it such that you go to bed no matter what between 10 to 11, and you set your alarm to wake up at a certain time, that will make it such that over time, your body will naturally release the appropriate amount of melatonin at the appropriate time so that you're not overdoing it with sleep. I can't emphasize enough the importance of getting outside whenever you can, even though there's not that many daylight hours, but especially being up in New York and in Massachusetts, we live so far above the equator. We know that our vitamin D levels are just naturally low up here. We're not able to get the amount of sunlight to make it such that we have decent vitamin D levels throughout the winter months. So as much as you can to go outside would really make a huge difference. And I don't recommend this for everyone, but this is something you could talk to your primary care doctor about. But to buy some over-the-counter vitamin D, vitamin D3, 1,000 international units, taking that daily could just make it such that during these winter months, you have good levels. Now, why do we keep talking about vitamin D? Like, what is the big deal? The reason we keep going on and on and on about sunlight and vitamin D is that vitamin D is associated with serotonin. And also it's connected to melatonin. We don't know how all of these things work, but we do know that when people have more vitamin D levels on board, their serotonin levels are relatively decent. So we want to just make sure that our chemistry reflects how it is we want to feel, right? And the one other thing I see that in the chat, there are some questions about light therapy, which we have already touched upon. It could be really confusing to figure out, where do I start with buying a light box? And while Lisa was talking, I went to Amazon and just kind of searched light boxes really quick. But I think the thing that is important to look for in a light box is that it's 10,000 lux. I'm writing this in the chat. Make sure that in the description it says 10,000 lux and that it has low UV. The other thing too, the bigger the size of the light box, the better, because then the surface area is so much larger. And so your body is just able to absorb it more. Now, you don't have to sit in front of the light box and make direct eye contact with that. That's actually not good for you, especially if you have some eye-related issues. But think about it being set up in your kitchen, set up in your bedroom, and it could be part of your morning routine. If you're the type that gets up in the morning, likes to scroll through social media or go through some websites to read the news, you can have it on for 30 minutes right next to you as you're going through your morning routine. If you like to drink a cup of coffee or drink some tea, have it up while you're doing that, or while you're getting your kids ready for school. It could be in the same environment for you. I recommend doing at least 30 minutes so that it's in close proximity to you, but you don't have to sit and stare at it. The last thing I'll say about the light box is it's actually really important to touch base with your provider about it, your mental health provider, or even your primary care provider, because for some people, the light can make it such that it can activate certain mood states, especially if you are living with bipolar disorder. It can activate a state of mania because you're receiving all of this activating light that can elevate your mood. And for some people, it can elevate it too much. So you just want to let people know that you're doing that. And then also, especially if you experience any headaches or any eye strain, it's just important to talk to your provider about that so they can provide some guidance on how best to use the light box.
I was just going to comment really quick. This was probably 5 or 6 years ago, and that's why I brought up vitamin D, just because personally, I was at work. Now, this was way before COVID, and I was physically in an office, but I could literally just fall asleep sitting up. That was how exhausted I was. And this was going on for, I would say, a month or so, and I didn't know what was happening. So I went to the doctor, and they took blood work, and they were like, your levels are barely readable. And so they gave me a prescription. But that is something that I totally agree. You should make sure that you talk to your doctor. My daughter, she's 19, and she recently got blood work, through a physical. Same thing. They had to put her on prescription level because, like you said, especially up here, there's probably a lot more of that happening than we may imagine. So just checking, it's worthwhile finding out, where you're at when it comes to that.
Yeah, and I'll just add, so last year I actually purchased a light therapy lamp on Amazon, and in the instructions it said, the first time you use it, only use it for 15 minutes and then slowly work up more just to see how you're reacting to it. So they do have instructions that come with it. Also, make sure it's good to do your research, understand how it works and why it works. So keep that stuff in mind. And I don't remember the brand. I know someone asked, but just look up some things, check out the reviews, see what people are recommending. And
well, there are also some consumer sites as well that there's so much now on the internet that you can look at. And then of course, Dr. Crawford gave the 2 things that you should be looking for, but there's some people have already done the research to give you the best value, and with all the things that we were talking about.
Great. So, and then just remembering, to get enough sleep, right? We're talking about how we can combat these symptoms and different things, right? Just getting enough rest can be really helpful. Does anyone have any other questions about the winter blues or about seasonal affective disorder?
And I just posted in the chat a really nice article just summarizing light therapy and some of the key things to look out for. One other thing, I'm not here to push over-the-counter supplements, but since we're talking about treatment, we talked about vitamin D. Another thing that I'm a huge fan of is omega-3. I think that taking omega-3, taking 2,000 milligrams, which sounds like a lot because they're pretty big capsules. I do think that also there's some evidence to support that it helps with the symptoms of depression. And so if we're thinking about proactive things, preventative things that one can do during the winter months, omega-3, can you please? Yes, omega-3, 2,000 milligrams, vitamin D, vitamin D3, 1,000 units. And for those who have the seasonal pattern in which they're experiencing low mood, they can talk to their provider about light therapy. And that article has a nice summary of some of the things to look for, but 10,000 lux and low UV. And exercise, some of Lisa's suggestions as well.
Great, awesome. Thank you so much. So now I'd like to shift the conversation over to what are the holiday blues? So Dr. Crawford, if you want to introduce the holiday blues.
Yeah, so the holiday blues, it certainly can overlap with the winter blues, and it can be really hard to figure out what form of the blues am I experiencing. All you know is that you're not feeling great, especially between November to January. And so this may actually be a little bit more challenging for people to tease out, because it's during a period of time in which you're just surrounded by images of joy, of celebration. You're hearing conversations about people connecting with family, connecting with friends, and you're seeing and hearing things that center around some holidays that tend to be primarily celebrated within our country. And it could be hard for people who aren't part of the dominant culture here, the dominant American culture, and they can feel somewhat isolated during this time in which they're just seeing all these images that are geared towards certain holidays. And so for some, they can notice that they're feeling a little bit more irritable, that they notice that they're feeling more stress, or there's this sense of tension that they feel in their bodies during this period of time. But also people may be reminded of things and people that they've lost, and feeling this deep sense and profound sense of loss of what their life used to be like during happier times, or the loss of people that they really cared about, because the holidays and thinking about family traditions, it often comes up and we're reminded of those traditions during that time and who was the one who coordinated all of that. So it can bring up a lot of these sorts of thoughts. But what we do know is that these feelings, these symptoms that I described, they're temporary. They only are around during the holidays, which typically we describe as being between Thanksgiving and New Year's. And the other thing too, that it could be really challenging about the holidays is just the sense of expectations that tends to come up during this period of time. The expectation that you're supposed to be having fun, that you're supposed to be happy, that you're supposed to enjoy all these different celebrations. And also the expectation that financially you need to keep up with everyone. When you turn on the news and they talk about Americans and how much they spend during the holiday season, the latest report that I heard was $1,000 people are spending. Each person is spending close to $1,000 For some, that is absolutely not doable, but there's this pressure to be able to keep up with everyone and to not disappoint kids, especially when they're going to school and there are these conversations with their peers about what's on your Christmas list and feeling the need like you have to be like everyone else. So there's all these different sources of stress, the financial stress, the stress around social gatherings, and then also the stress about what it means to be around family. You know, family for some could be a really positive and a really positive force in someone's life. But for other people, it could be a huge source of conflict and stress. And so having to be around the family and being part of those dynamics and having some of the conversations, difficult conversations with some family can bring on a lot of anxiety. So you can experience a whole variety of feelings during this particular period of time. But if you notice that there's any shift in your mood, if you notice that you're just feeling uncomfortable, more stressed during these conversations around the holidays, it's probably the holiday blues.
Great.
I just want to bring up one thing too, and a part of it from my own experience, but also something that, again, I talk to my clients a lot about, but during the holidays, it's okay to set boundaries as well for yourself, right? I think, in some cases, I've had to create boundaries with very close, and I say close, what I mean is, a parent or a brother or sister. There's been times when I've set very, very strict boundaries and have said, I can't have this person in my life right now because they're actually causing me more stress and anxiety than when they are not around. And I know that's a very difficult call to make. And I'm not saying that's what everybody should do, but you do have that choice. If it makes you, feel less stressed and less anxious and happier, then that's something to think about and consider. And what would be impacted if you did make that decision? Is it better for your family? Is it better for you? And, I have an example of, and I don't put those boundaries on my children, but they know I have it. But they, I say, listen, if you want to do things with those family members, by all means, that, this is something that you should do if it makes you happy. And they've come back and said, I wish you all would have a relationship. And I say, you know what? I think it's great. I'm happy that you are in a positive relationship with that person, but this is what's right for me. And it shows them that I am protecting myself so that I can be happier and live a happier life, and that they have choices as well. If they need to do that in their lifetime, you can do it respectfully, but know that especially during these stressful times, if you need to set aside time for yourself, if you need to say no to somebody, you can do it in a nice way, but still, maintain that sense of, I need to take care of myself right now, because you don't always have to do a million different things for everybody else. You need to take care of yourself first, truly. And that isn't a selfish thing. It's actually something I strongly believe in, that you need to take care of yourself so that, as I mentioned earlier, you can be the best version for everybody that's in your life. Because if you're not happy, then most likely you're not going to have be happy around those other people either, if that makes sense.
It makes total sense, Lisa. Yes,
Okay.
yes. Because I think it's so important for people to do a gut check whenever they're looking at their holiday invites, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you right away feel, oh goodness, you feel stressed, you feel anxious, there's a pit in your stomach, you start to notice that your head's starting to get kind of tense, you have a headache, and you're thinking about it day after day after day as you're kind of leading up to the event, that's a signal that perhaps being at that particular event, being around a certain group of people is not good for you physically and mentally. If you
That's right.
feel it when you see the invitation and it's on your mind for an extended period of time, then it's okay to say no and to be proactive about it. Because what we can also do during this period of time is we can engage in avoidant behavior. We could just turn off our phone. We won't respond to the text. We won't respond to the email, but you're not really resolving the issue because you're still carrying it, right?
Right.
Like, you know,
Right.
the event's coming up, and even at the hour that it's starting, like, you're still
Yeah.
feeling it, right? So just rid yourself of the burden of carrying that and just have the conversation directly. And I think when you are having the conversation, it's important not to apologize for how it is that you're
Right.
feeling. And I think we're so, we often fall into this trap of trying to apologize away, to be like, I'm so sorry, but you know, it's the kids, and we make excuses, and that
Right.
doesn't feel good too when we walk away from the conversation. So just say very clear and be very direct. Thank you for the invite, but I won't be able to make it this year. I really hope that you have a good time.
And to
And
your
then what will
point,
happen is people are going to be like, well, why can't you come? Again, I really hope you have a good time. I have to go right now, but thanks again.
I would say you don't have to give an explanation, right? You don't have to. And you can just say thank you, but right now it just is not, it doesn't fit in my schedule. And it's very freeing when you can unburden yourself from those obligations that you don't want to go to. Sometimes we don't even realize how much stress, like you said, it's this feeling. And then when it's over and done and you're like, wow, I in the moment, that was really tying me down. And what a relief that this is over. So you can get rid of those stressors early on and just feel so much better, so much lighter.
And, you know, I know that we've been talking a lot about family, which is a huge piece and a huge source of stress for a lot of people, but also thinking about the workplace environment, because I also think that is a really challenging environment to navigate during the holidays, when there are all these different celebrations and workplace gatherings. And, you know, it may be geared towards the holidays, and you may be someone who doesn't celebrate these holidays, and you don't want to feel left out, or don't want coworkers to ask lots of questions. And so that could put you in a very uncomfortable position. You're like, am I being true to myself if I, you know, participate in this and I'm minimizing my own cultural values and beliefs? It really puts people in a challenging situation. And so I do think that's another scenario in which folks can feel empowered to set boundaries too, to be like, oh, thanks for the after work happy whatever, but I'm not going to participate, but thank you. Because it could be not only because your culture doesn't align with some of the celebrations, but also during these celebrations, during this period of time, there can be lots of food, lots of alcohol, and those things could be quite triggering for a lot of people. And so rather than having the stress of figuring out how you're going to navigate that situation in front of your boss and your coworkers, just, you know, to have a conversation about how it is you can't go, but don't feel the need to over explain, because it's also work and you just want to do what makes you feel comfortable.
Right. And Martin, I think that's great. You remove toxic people from your life. And yes, when it comes to family, it can be tricky, but you know, I think you can find a way to manage it well. And me, personally, I've gone to therapy for a long time. You know, obviously being part of NAMI, I believe in mental health, and I believe in going to therapy, finding someone who can support you and identify areas that you know we need to work on. That might be one way too that can help you maneuver it. But even if they are your family, you can still set up boundaries. And you know, my mother and I love her to death. But since COVID, and she had a brain tumor removed. She has lost a lot of her ability to socialize properly is the only way I can say it. She's kind of, it's sort of awkward now because she has been in isolation so much. And I'm finding that I'm having to set up boundaries with her as well because she has none. She has lost that ability to socialize and understand, read body language, read what's happening. And so you can do it in a nice way and feel good about it and know that, it's important to have them in your life just for your own well-being.
Yeah. And, more than one thing can be true at the same time. In this case, you love your mother
Yes.
and it's difficult for you to be around her
Yes.
during social situations. Both could
Right.
be true, and that's okay. And so I think oftentimes when we think about having these conversations with family or not wanting to be around them during certain events, like we feel guilty, we feel like we're not showing them that we love them.
Right.
But love, especially the love that we experience in a family, is unconditional. So
Correct.
you not showing up to this dinner, it should not. The
Right.
hope is that it does not disrupt the long-standing relationship that you have with this person
Yes.
who's been a part of your life from the beginning, right?
Mhm.
But it's hard to hold on to that. The other thing that can be difficult too is that when you do go to family events, and there is that one or two people who it's been challenging for you to engage with in the past, I do think it's important to come up with a plan ahead of time for how you're going to navigate some of those interactions. I find that planning helps to reduce the anxiety that comes along with uncertainty. And there's a lot of uncertainty that can present itself when you're around someone in which you already have like a challenging relationship with, because you don't know how it's going to go. So if you have a plan in mind, I'm not saying to script all your interactions ahead of time, but sometimes it could be helpful to have some go-to phrases that you could use when you're interacting with someone who it's been difficult with in the past. And so if there's someone who tends to go into conversations, controversial conversations and topics that you highly disagree with, it's okay to say, you know what, Uncle Bob, let's just agree to disagree. I'm going to go over here right now, but it's nice seeing you.
Yeah.
Or, to say something like, I feel really strongly about this issue, so let's talk about something else. And so
Mhm.
you're not being avoidant, you're not trying to distract away, but you're trying to, demonstrate that you still love and care about this person, but at that particular moment in time, you just don't want to go there. That's okay.
Right.
But to
Right.
just have that in mind will sometimes be helpful. Mhm.
I have a question. So a conversation I have with a lot of my friends when they're visiting home for the holidays are people commenting on like their appearance, their weight, maybe their relationship status. Like what's a way someone could prepare for having to deal with like that auntie who asks you all those kind of questions?
Do you mean like can you give me an example of a question that they might ask you?
Sure, like, or just like, oh, like you've gained a lot of weight since the last time I seen you, or oh, you don't have a partner yet. What's going on? Yeah, these are things lots of
Wow.
people hear from their family and conversations I have with a lot of my friends. Like, oh, I'm dreading seeing someone because they're gonna say something.
Oh yeah, I know that experience very, very well. You are like
Wow.
speaking to me, actually. Lisa, I don't know if there's anything you want to say about some of that.
Uh, wow. That's shocking to me that actually that people will say that. Uh, Let me think about that for a second.
No.
Go ahead, because I mean, that's amazing to me, but go ahead.
Yeah, and for some, especially during this period of time where we're reemerging from COVID, even though it's still around,
Mm.
we'll be reconnecting with family who we haven't seen for a while for some, because people might have missed out on last year's festivities because we were in the height of the pandemic. And so we do know that for some people, they gained weight over the course of the pandemic, but also people just change and fluctuate in weight too. That happens. But I do know, and I'll just say for me too, like that could be like a major barrier to actually wanting to go to some of these family events, to some of these social events, like being really concerned about the comments that people are going to make. And so I don't have any good advice about this, but one thing that I do wonder when you are faced with that question, oh my goodness, you put on some weight, like, did you gain weight or you look different? I wonder about kind of coming back with a response like, yeah, I did. It's just stating facts. And I noticed that whenever you kind of just lean into it and you say, yes, I did, it's hard for the person to follow up with something after that, right? You kind of just you just stop it right in its tracks. Yeah, I did gain some weight. The pandemic was difficult, or I did gain some weight. I'm getting older.
You know what? I like that response because to your point, you stop anything further from them able to go further with it. And you just reminded me, I did have a client who has who had put on some weight and she did not want to go out in public. She was doing a lot more indoors. She said she was afraid to who she might meet when she's out and about. One person asked her actually if she was pregnant. And I felt for her. And so, at being her coach, and of course, I am a cheerleader for all of my clients, no matter what stage that they're in. But, and I work with them to love themselves for who they are in that moment. That still comes as a blow when someone says that to you. So I think I love that answer of, yes, I did. And just, it kind of stops that conversation. And you don't have to feel bad about your, saying, because the more you talk about it, probably the worse you're going to feel.
Mm-hmm. And it empowers you to take control over that conversation too. I did.
Absolutely.
Or if you don't even want to say that, it makes me wonder about other options too, to respond to that. For some people, it could be hard to lean into that because we know for some people who have some significant challenges around weight, it may be really hard in the moment to have enough of capacity to be able to provide that response. And so I don't have a good solution there, but it really is a challenge. I like that, Isabel. So that's another tactic that I've used in the past, especially having 2 pregnancies back to back. Sometimes I would preemptively make a comment about my weight and just say, yes, I have gained weight, and it is what it is. But again, that takes a lot to be able to do that. And sometimes just letting people know ahead of time if there are different topics or things that you really don't want to come up, perhaps it would be helpful, like whether it's the host of the party, to be like, just so you know, I really don't want to talk about my ex, or I don't want to talk about the job that I just left. Can we just make it such that conversations don't go there?
Well, there's your boundary right
there.
there.
Exactly. And then you can employ some help to deflect against that conversation.
Yeah, I love that. I just had someone who I know tell my daughter was talking with this individual, and the person said, wow, you talk a lot. And I, of course, mama bear, right? And I know this person. So I'm like, how am I going to approach this? But that's a perfect response to say to the person, yes, I do. And now what?
What do you want to say? Exactly. You see how we can't even respond to that because you're like, yeah.
I love it.
To say. So yeah, lean into it. State facts.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Own it.
Beautiful.
Yeah, own it.
Great, thank you. Let me just check the chat. I think there might have been one more. Oh, nope, we're good. Okay. All right, so can we just maybe summarize some of the advice around the holiday blues, just because I don't know where we were before, but right, we were talking about
Boundaries,
the
definite boundaries. So
right?
if this, we were talking about, if there's a get together that you are not comfortable with going to, just let that individual know that you're not able to go, but thank you for the invite, and kind of leave it at that. And it'll bring automatic relief and something that you don't have to stress about over the course of the next couple months. And again, setting boundaries with your family. So to Isabel's point, where she said, I'm not, please, yes, I don't want to comment on my appearance, or as Dr. Christine said, I don't want to talk about this particular relationship if we're going, if somebody's going through a tough time. Oh, perfect. There we go. Yes.
You're doing a great job, Lisa. I just wanted to have this in the
No,
background.
this is perfect. This is perfect. Yes. No, all of that.
Yeah, and I do think that, Lisa's point about the routines is so important. Make sure you get sleep. The other thing is that it's so hard to eat and drink in moderation during this period of time. As a society, we tend to normalize overindulgence during this period of time. And that may not align with some of your goals for yourself, your personal health goals. And so make sure to do what's right with you and all of your different needs. Go ahead, Lisa.
I would say, as a point, they say that on average, people gain around 7 pounds during the holiday season, only because of, we there's alcohol everywhere, there's cookies, there's cakes, there's and that may be something else where you have to set up some boundaries and say, can we maybe not bring in the big batch of brownies, or food every single day, and you have to speak up for yourself. I know it might be difficult and not a popular decision, but to gain up to 7 pounds over the course of 30 days, that's a lot to try to could take you off the track of your goals. It could just affect your health overall. Alcohol, as we talked about earlier, is a depressant, which makes it more difficult when you're already probably more on the depressed side with the seasonal aspect and the holiday blues. So I just wanted to mention that piece.
Absolutely. And I always like to hold both sides of some of these things, for other people who may be so happy that they finally have the opportunity to reconnect with their friends and family and to celebrate again. It's okay if you do want to eat the cookies, right?
Yeah.
And so we're also, during this period of time, there's so many advertisements for different home fitness routines and fitness equipment and diets that people can sign up for. And so, if you do, want to participate in some of that with regards to eating and all the meals and celebrations, to also not have such strong negative feelings towards your body, and we do fluctuate at times. So just trying to find that fine balance too. So if there are some weight related changes, for us to not feel like we have to crash diet, because that also has been normalized too during this time.
It has.
Yeah.
And that's when I get on my soapbox a little bit about all of the marketing that's out there, the programs that are out there. They're one size fits all, and we all are individuals. We have different body types. Our metabolisms are different. How we how our body metabolizes certain foods is different from person to person, and it can get really confusing, and they feed on our emotions. So, you know, and that is something that, you know, I am always available to talk to people about, you know, if there's questions about what type of diets, et cetera, because I know it's difficult to, you know, find the right answer when there's so many different programs out there today. But yes.
And I know that for this in the spirit of summary, here's a little slide about setting boundaries, and I will send these slides over to Cassandra so that you guys have access to them, because it's just a nice reminder, especially if you have an event coming up or if you start to notice a shift in your mood, to be able to have access to some of this information, to share it with other people, because I do think it's important for us to have these open conversations about our mental health during this period of time, to also normalize other feelings and emotions that this time of the year brings. It doesn't always have to be so joyous and fun. It's okay when it's not, and to be comfortable talking about it when it is not.
Absolutely.
And then the last thing, I don't think we mentioned about budgeting, right? About the financial stressors of the holidays. Do you have any tips for kind of setting realistic expectations when it comes to that?
I think, you know, again, if depending on what's happening, because again, some people have during COVID, there's going to be some more financial strains, but setting limits again with people that you're giving gifts to, or, you know, say, maybe can we try something different? Maybe we make our, you know, if somebody's crafty, maybe we can make our gifts, and that's a little bit more personal. Or maybe instead of this year giving to everybody, we pull from a hat. You know, I know too, sometimes making it like baked goods, things like that, get creative about different options for gifting. It doesn't have to be something extravagant. Again, the holidays are supposed to be about being together and you know, being supportive of each other, and it's about the thought that counts, etc. It's okay to set that boundary with other people and say, you know, can we do this year? And it doesn't have to be extravagant gifts either. You know, maybe put a cap on it. Say you can get like this past weekend, there was a vendor event that I was with, and I got these beautiful handmade ornaments that were $8, and so it was affordable, and it was a beautiful gift that I can give to somebody else, and I'm also supporting a small business. So there are options out there, and you know, supporting local businesses is, to me, I think is so important, especially with the way the economy is, and there's more and more people who are in business for themselves, and lots of different options out there that, you know, you can get creative.
I think it's helpful to get the family involved too, like to have these open conversations, including the kids, because I do think that's good modeling for them too, because as they grow up and start to have their own families, they'll know how to kind of navigate some of the expectations, and to be able to focus on what the holidays really mean, and that's about togetherness, like you had mentioned. And so brainstorm with them as a group as to how you all are going to celebrate these holidays. What are you going to focus on? What are some of the things that you could do? And that can also kind of relieve you of the burden to fix it, so that it's, because that's also another expectation. Like you have to figure out the great kind of like scenario and setup for everyone to enjoy, but just have a conversation with it and get your family's input.
Yes. Agreed.
Great. Thank you both so much for joining us. Is there anything else you'd like to add, or if anyone else has any questions?
No, I mean, I love that Dr. Crawford and I, our thought processes were in alignment. Because, it's the self-care and the boundaries to me are critical, especially during stress, whether it's holidays or seasonal or not. Those are things that you should incorporate in your life all year round. Just because it's been proven. And I use myself as an example, but I learned the hard way to that I had to take care of myself because I raised my 2 kids on my own for a long time, being a single mom, stressful job. I didn't take care of myself. I was always like, okay, I need to be there for the kids. Well, then my health started to deteriorate. So it's really, really important to take care of yourself and to set those boundaries now. Don't wait. It's what you need to do for yourself. So thank you. I really enjoyed this very much.
And I wish I could be celebrating the holidays with you guys, Cass and
Right?
Lisa. You guys are great.
We can have a virtual party.
Yeah, that will be low cost. So
Yes, exactly.
I can teach everyone how to knit to give presents.
Yeah.
Yay, that sounds awesome.
But
Yep,
thank you both so much. Thank you for all this information. I will send it to everyone who registered. The slides Dr. Crawford had prepared. It will also, this recording will be in our e-newsletter on Thursday, along with the slides. So if you didn't get the email, it will be there. Thank you all so much. Happy holidays. Remember to self-care. Have a great night.
Thanks
Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.